Ladies, gentlemen, and arisen of all ages, this beautiful game of Dragons Dogma 2 is just chock full of various activities and mechanics to really make the world feel special and alive. And one of those is actually this little lad right here. Hello! Shut up. This man is responsible for Ibrahim's Scrap, a store in the Checkpoint Rest town in the west, and you are directed towards this shop for a couple of different quests, so you likely do know what it is and that it exists, but we'll explain quickly for those who don't, and then most of the day will just be about tips or tricks that you can use with this system, or just specifically very useful interactions you may not think about or anticipate within it. Starting off then with the simple part, this shop is known as the Scrap Shop, and it has two sort of major purposes. He has a small regular inventory as a merchant, sure, but then he has View Special Finds, which specifically lets you rebuy any valuable or quest items that are unique that you may have sold off or lost in some way because you didn't realize they might be important later. Usually buying items here will cost a lot more than their sell value would be, so don't think that this means it's clear to just sell everything that you pick up without thinking about it. This is really useful though as a mechanic to remember. If you ever think that you might be soft locked on a quest or something like that, just come have a visit over to this shop and make sure that you aren't missing a specific item, make sure it's not in this inventory. A common one for this, for example, is the Regalia Sword, which reads as being a valuable item, and then people see that it sells for like 30,000 gold and they actually just don't realize that completing the quest gives you twice as much as that, so maybe they sell it early. The other main function here is to request a forgery. By doing this, you pay a bunch of gold and a couple of rests later, come back to the shop and you can pick up a duplicate item. For the vast majority of items, this is a more literal interpretation of a fake, but for quite a few of them, you can actually get ones that have uses and actually represent and duplicate what the original item was. That out of the way, let's start with a few tricks for this system. First, if you ever lock yourself out of a quest completely by accident, and it can be solved with a specific item, you can actually often ask another player with earlier game progress to help you out at minimal expense to themselves. Through the pawn system, if you use a friend's pawn, it will cost you 0 rift crystals to do. Then when you send pawns back, you can give them pretty much any item in your inventory as a gift. We talked about the special finds mechanic a moment ago, and a fun part of this is if you actually give away specifically the unique, valuable, or implement type items that you would need for quests generally, they will still show up in the forgery shop, so you can gift them to players and then make duplicates for gold. Using this, you can literally just make bonuses of items that should be limited in each playthrough. While this of course doesn't work with things like equipment, as that would be a bit too far, where this really comes in handy for is for something like the mage and sorcerer meister quests. Both of these meisters request that you give them 3 out of 5 books. They both want the same 5 books, and there is only one copy of most of those books, with there being a second copy of one of them. The result of that is if you know everything before giving up the books to the different people, you can easily avoid locking yourself off. But if you don't know about it, and most people won't the first time they encounter it, you can put yourself in a situation where you cannot do both of these meisters in the same playthrough, unless you do this trick and have a friend send you one of their books as a gift, which they can then buy back in the scrap store so they still have their own. The other way to avoid this problem preemptively then is through the forgery system. As the books for these quests are forgeable, you can make copies, and they aren't necessarily direct copies, they are fakes, they do have different names, and if you give the forgeries to Mirden, he actually won't realize and he will let you complete the quest as he doesn't intend to cast the spells. Do not, however, attempt to give the forgeries to the other meister, that's when you need the pawn trick to actually succeed. In a similar vein, there's actually a way that you can use this merchant to get a new quest ending in a positive direction, and that is with Isaac in Back Batal. This vendor first asks you for a ripened quince, then mentioned that he has a book that he's trying to cast on the transference of souls. He reads it, the first part, but he needs the second book to actually learn it. You can buy this book directly from Ibrahim's shop, the legitimate version, and give it to Isaac, who will then accidentally murder his family and disappear forever, opening up the option to put Hugo there as a part of his quest ending too. But alternatively, if you buy the book from Ibrahim's scrap and then ask him to forge a copy of it, then give the forged copy to Isaac, his spell won't work, his family will live, and he'll go back to just living his normal happy life, being the apothecary just every day. He'll actually also offer the ability to sell his first book from his shop so that you can have both yourself, letting you combine them to create, well, a book that can cast Celestial Pain, the legendary mage skill. On which note, we have a really niche but interesting interaction, which is the Myrmicolion card. This gives you access to the Rose Chateau in Vernworth, and you can accidentally just forge this to create a perfect copy of it, which I suppose makes sense as it is just sort of an actual document, and then you can use the pawn trick to send this onwards to someone super early game to let them have, I guess, early access to the Rose Chateau. Look, I didn't say it was going to help speedrunners, I said it was interesting, though Baldur's Gate 3 did have a 6% speedrun, so maybe I'm coming at this the wrong way. On a similar but possibly more useful note than that is the Batal Residence Permit. This allows you free passage through the Checkpoint Rest Town border. This can be forged perfectly for a proper duplicate, and these can also be sent as gifts back with pawns, so you could technically send one of these to a low-level friend at the start of the game and let them just go through the border without any issue immediately, which is an interesting thing to be aware of. On to a bit more practical ones then. Relatively early in the story, you get an unlimited use jail key from Brant in Vernworth to go break out a prisoner. After you complete the objective of this, he will ask you for the key back before counting the quest is completed. But obviously, it's an infinite use jail key, and that's quite useful. So what if you bring it to Ibrahim's scrap and ask him to make a forgery of it? Well, you get a genuine second key that you can use infinite times. So you can give Brant back his, but still have your own key for the rest of the playthrough. Then we have an interesting one, which is actually most monster materials seem to be forgeable as well. Saurian tails, which can make newt liquor, is great for this, and you can even do newt liquor itself too. Dragon scales for equipment upgrades come through as proper dragon scales exact duplicates, and I haven't yet found a monster material that this doesn't work for, so if you want to upgrade some of your gear and have at least one of the required materials, all you need to do is have gold and use forgeries to get the rest. The one somewhat exception to this then is Worm's Life crystals, as these are more of a currency than a material and are much more valuable, so you can't do that with those. They are specifically not forgeable. Then the next one is that you can forge all kinds of healing items, and for the most part this is sort of pointless as they cost more to forge than just buying them from shops, but this also applies to the all heal elixirs, the potions that can clear your loss gauge. These are a much rarer and more valuable consumable than most, and so again you can just forge these in exchange for gold for as many as you want, which is extremely valuable for gameplay. Then we have something to talk about related to a specific Sphinx riddle, so if you don't want any proper Sphinx spoilers for the game, then avoid this section and skip to the timestamp on screen. But one of the riddles will specifically ask you to go back to the first seeker token that you found in the game within 7 days, which is a very tight time frame when in-game travel is a consideration, especially if you're unsure where it actually is. When you get there, you'll get a special item called a finder's token. If you bring this to the scrap store, Ibrahim can make perfect copies of them that the Sphinx will accept for the riddle, but also a neat thing that you can do with this is also gift them to pawns to send finder's tokens to their masters. And honestly, I think this is one of the best things the community could do, is if we just sort of band together, create a ton of forged finder's tokens, and just spread them around the world, because that quest step can be really aggravating for a lot of people. And I think it's just a fun and unique part of the game that the community actually is capable of coming together to just make it not be anymore. On a similar note to that, and also heavily Sphinx related, the item that you get for actually opening the giant chest at the end, which is a reward for fully containing the beast, let's say, is called the Eternal Wakestone. This revives any NPC within a reasonably large radius around you. This is great if there is an ox cart raid gone wrong, a drake attack on the city, or everyone's favorite Dragon's Plague, as this can be used to essentially undo most of the damage that would trigger. This item can be properly forged without any issue, creates a proper duplicate, pretty large gold cost though of 30,000 to actually make it, which is difficult, but you can genuinely get multiple of this item in the same playthrough with this method. In case you're wondering as well, these can be sent as gifts with pawn as well. So I mentioned how it would be awesome if the community could just like spread finder's tokens around to combat that one riddle, but what if we did the exact same thing with Eternal Wakestones to help combat Dragon's Plague? It seems so poetic almost. The idea that the Dragon's Plague spreads from one player's pawn to another, fucking up each other's games, but could be completely solved forever by a bunch of players just uniting to send these items around with pawns back to their owners, just populating the world with loads and loads of these at the cost of gold, obviously. Then a final fun note, a more minor tip, you can actually raise your affinity with Ibrahim as an NPC as well, which can make him give you discounts in his base shop, but sadly not the forge or special finds menu. But on top of that, like all NPCs, if you reach high affinity, he will leave gifts at your house in Vernworth occasionally. And a funny thing for him is every single item that he leaves you at your house is a forgery of something else in the game at random, an item that does nothing, one of the useless ones, which is just beautifully done, Capcom, absolutely beautiful. As well, worth mentioning, the Ring of Eternal Bond can be gifted to instantly max affinity to any NPC in the game, but you can actually buy these back from the special finds menu too. It costs 200,000 gold to do so, but if you are overloading on money and just want to instantly make someone love you completely, then it is an option for you to do that, and it's an interesting way to do it on repeat. And that just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a nice roundup of a couple of major tips and tricks for Ibrahim's scrap store and why you should probably use it more than the majority of players currently seem to be doing, as well as just a list of some very useful items that you can properly forge real copies of, and honestly just a couple of ideas thrown around of some items that we should probably maybe start purposefully making forgeries of, and then sending on to other players with their pawns as a community effort. I hope you've enjoyed this and hopefully you've learned something new as far as helpful information. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.